everyone, and welcome back to the Steam Forward podcast. Well, I'm your host, Savannah, and I'm so excited that you're tuned in and joining us today. And today, we're just going to have a conversation, we're just chatting about Black History Month. And as you view this podcast, it will be in February, and it will be Black History Month. So I'm here with Pastor Linda Freeman again, and we're just going to sit here and chat to you guys. And so before we started the podcast, we were doing some research.
Yes.
And so we were just Googling about Black history and like themes. And so we were brought to this website by the Library of Congress.
Right.
Yeah.
And you know what? Maybe not everybody knows there is a Library of Congress.
Right.
And every single important written piece of material lives in the Library of Congress that has to do with the United States.
Yeah. It's amazing. It has so many different articles and features and websites. It has things for just people who want to know more. It has things if you're an educator. It has things if you're a child, a student. There's so many different forms and places just to get history. Mm-hmm. And so we were looking at Dr. Carver G. Woodson.
Yes.
And his amazing contribution to Black history. And in 1925, he was actually technically the founder of Black History Month.
Well, and we found out, I knew, but we're going to say we're just finding out once again that Dr. Carter Woodson was a Harvard-trained historian who really got interested in documenting African-American history. And he started it as Black History Week.
Yeah.
And then it grew and grew and grew to become Black History Month. Black History Month.
So exciting. And one thing that we learned that the Library of Congress does, they give us a word, a theme on what Black History Month is.
And we're all about words.
Oh, we love words. And so the word they gave us is resistance.
Resistance. That's a very strong word.
It is. Spell it. No, I'm joking.
Well, when we were looking up the theme, resistance for Black History Month 2023 is resisting the idea that Black history is something we need to pull back from.
Right.
And so in honor of Dr. Carter G. Woodson's contribution and everything that has happened with this concept of really pulling together Black history or African American history, in honor of him, the word is resistance.
Yeah. We must resist.
We have to resist that idea.
We do.
So that more about that is found on the Library of Congress website, blackhistorymonth.gov, if you want to read more about that. But we also found out that the National Museum of African American History and Culture, this year, they have opened a brand new exhibit on Afrofuturism.
Wow. What a word.
That's a big word too.
Honestly, personally, for me, that's a new concept. So I think there's probably a bunch of other people out there that are just like that too. So what does Afrofuturism mean? Well,
Afrofuturism is a concept of seeing African Americans in the future. And I don't mean like 5 years from now. I mean science fiction future.
Right.
So Savannah, think of a movie that has to do with science fiction, that has African Americans in it, and Africans in it, and it's futuristic. What would that be? What do you think? What do you think
the
of?
One and only Disney, Black Panther.
Okay, Black Panther is a great example of Afrofuturism, and particularly Black Panther's sister, Shuri, is really the model, a role model in terms of Afrofuturism, because she shows an African person, an African descent person really involved with technology.
Yeah.
And developing new things for the future.
Right. And I think that there's another movie that we can also think of.
What? Wait a minute. I gotta think. What movie?
I think Avatar would be a great example as well.
Avatar? Tell us how.
Well, Avatar, it's the blue. No, I'm joking. So I can't really explain Avatar. I've never seen it.
Okay, wait a minute, everybody. We have to have a chat with
I've
Miss
seen the
Savannah,
first one. I've never seen number 2.
How did she not see Avatar Way of Water?
I know.
And our summer camp theme this summer is what?
The ocean, the sea.
Oh, okay. I guess she's going to be seeing Avatar 2 soon. But what we found out is that the Na'vi people that happen to be blue in the movie, but they are styled and inspired by the Nilotic people of Africa. There's a tribe called, I think I'm saying it the
Nilotic,
the Nilotic people. And we learned that they're from South Sudan, northern Kenya, and western Ethiopia.
Right.
And if you look them up and you Google that, you can see pictures of them, and you will be shocked to find out how their clothing, their hairstyle, their jewelry, their body shape, their height. They are the tallest people in Africa. I think that's what I read.
Yeah.
And they are the inspiration for the Na'vi people.
Yeah. It's pretty amazing that we get to see ourselves in these futuristic, not only being like scientists, but engineers, and just creating this new world that is fun and exciting.
Okay, but wait a minute. If we're going to talk about Afrofuturism, we have to talk about Octavia Butler.
Yes, and we were having a great conversation about your favorite author and all these books that she writes. And for somebody who's trying to get into Afrofuturism, how can we get our feet wet? And maybe with a book that she's written, a piece of literature. Is there anything is there a great place and where we can start?
Okay, so let me say her name again. Her name is Octavia Butler. She wrote science fiction, and her main characters are African Americans or people from Africa in a future, some kind of science fiction future environment, situation, problem. And I would recommend starting with The Parable of the Sower because it's the near future. So if you read it today, it'll sound like next year.
Oh.
It'll sound like, this is what's happening now.
So it could be basically now or even 100 years from now, the possibility of
the way that the community is set up, it's like today.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And so the Parable of the Sower is really about a young girl who finds herself alone in the world after her entire community is wiped out. And there's it's pretty apocalyptic.
Oh, wow.
So one day she's just living her life. Her dad's a pastor. They have a great life in their community. They live in a beautiful home, lots of friends. Overnight, everything is gone.
Wow.
And she's the only one left in her family. She's about 14 years old, and she has to find her way.
Yeah, that's insane. I guess you can kind of draw the parallel of the sower, that when we're talking about Black history and just looking back at our 400 years of history, kind of like, can you imagine, somebody wakes you up one day and it's like, okay, you're chained to this person. Now walk to this city. You walk into this city, days and days, maybe weeks and weeks. It could have even been months and months. And then they're told, well, now get on the ship. You have nothing. You have no mom. You have no dad. You have no way of life, no identity almost.
And that really reminds me of Octavia Butler's book called Dawn. Right. And it's part of a trilogy. And the young woman who's the main character, she's about your age, actually. Okay. And there was some type of nuclear war. And it was worldwide nuclear war. And there were only pockets of people left around the globe. And those pockets of people started getting sick.
Wow.
And then there were even fewer. And then one day, out of nowhere, life forms come in the spaceship. And they're looking around. They said, somebody messed this planet up. But we can restore it. It's going to take a long time. But we can restore it.
Right.
But they realized in how long it's going to take to restore the Earth. We're going to have to change.
Right.
And the humans that are left over that have survived are going to change. And how are we going to survive together? And it doesn't have a happy ending. I'll tell you that. To me, it didn't have a happy ending. But those are two books I would highly recommend from Octavia Butler, Parable of the Sower and Dawn.
And I guess Afrofuturism and Octavia Butler's work. And even when we look back at the movies, it kind of gives us an example on what we can do, right, in this present day to maybe not have some of these harsh realities. Because as I believe, as you were speaking, it was the environment, like we left it for dead.
And it's really interesting that you bring up these parallels between history and the writings of Octavia Butler, because it does connect to what we talk about a lot in Gen 2050, because the young people that find themselves in a new world that they don't recognize is they have to use their minds and their heart to come up with something new. They have to develop all new systems. They have to come up with new technologies. And those are the things that we're talking about in Gen 2050, how to look forward into the future and see ourselves as a person that can add value to the future.
I love that. It's no matter what we've been through, that not only can I change, but it can be something good and it can be something positive. And I don't have to live in the negative. I don't have to live in my situation. I don't have to live in, like, I guess you could say, bondage.
I always have choices, and I always have hope.
We love Afrofuturism.
I really do.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So now we're just going to go ahead and wrap it up and end, as we always do, with the word of the day. And I think that we've kind of figured it out through this conversation. And I think even the Library of Congress gave us a great one, which was resistance. And then I think that you gave us another one, which was Afrofuturism.
Yeah. So today we had 2 words of the day, resistance. And that to me relates to Octavia Butler's Afrofuturistic books, because all of the people have to resist dying and giving up hope. They resist, even though everything around them is going downhill.
Yeah.
Right? They say, no, we're going to resist and we're going to find a way to move into the future.
Yeah. It's amazing. The correlations.
It really is. So resistance and Afrofuturism. And don't forget to get a book by Octavia Butler.
Yes, I'm getting mine today.
Oh, you need to.
Yes, I'm going to. Thank you guys so much for tuning in on our conversation about Black history and Afrofuturism. It was extremely educational, and I really enjoyed this podcast. And always a special thanks to the Children's Trust and Trinity Church for being our sponsors. And don't forget, there are 3 ways in which you can watch this podcast. If you'd like to listen to us, you can follow us on Apple and Spotify. Make sure to leave us a 5-star review. You can give us a comment. Just let us know how you're feeling about the podcast and maybe future topics. And you can also follow us on YouTube if you'd like to watch us. See you all next week. And remember, you are watching the Steam Forward Podcast.
Bye.
Steam Forward